Today, we're going to learn parts of a text that was written by the Maharal of Prague. We're going to learn about him in just a minute. This text actually is part of a very big text and huge work of the Maharal of Prague. Of course, we're not going to learn the huge work. It will take years, literally. But the idea is within his work on a specific subject that we're going to see in a minute, he has a whole chapter dealing with the 7 commandments, 7 mitzvot of Bnei Noach. And he has a very philosophical explanation of this. The truth is that we're going to see Hebrew and English in the screen. I'm not expecting you to know the Hebrew. Don't worry, I'll read it for you. But I thought that it would be interesting to see if any of you knows at least a little bit or whatever. We're going to follow the Hebrew, even though it's not the complete text of the chapter because it's a relatively long chapter, but we're going to learn at least the main ideas that the Maharal of Prague shares to understand the 7 commandments. Is this the only idea available around? No. This is one idea. And just as the style of the Maharal of Prague, it was very philosophical and very orderly speaking. So he has a very interesting view. So let's go. First of all, a very brief idea of who is the author of the idea that we're going to learn. He was called Rabbi Yehuda Loew. He lived in Prague in Europe. There you have the years. We don't really know when he was born, but whatever. You understand the years. And that's what I wrote down what Maharal actually means. That was not his name. His name was Maharal Loew, Yehuda Loew. But when you see the letters Maharal, Maharal Loew, so there you go with the Maharal of Prague. That's why we call him his way. I put a picture of his tomb site. He's buried in Prague, and he was a very big Talmudist and very big philosophy writer, mystic. Even though he doesn't write so much about mysticism, but it's a known mystic in the Jewish people. And there's a whole legend around him that we were not going to talk about it. A golem of Prague, he was a whole creation of him. Whatever, you can look it up and you will see. Within the works that he wrote many things and long things. Within the things that he wrote a whole commentary on Exodus, on the Agada of Pesach, the text that the Jewish people learn and read and share, etc., in the night of Pesach, coming out of Egypt and Exodus, etc. He wrote a whole work on that. Within that work is called Gevurot Hashem, the power of God. Within that work, chapter 66 deals mainly, like 95% of the chapter, talks about the 7 commandments that God gave the non-Jews to fulfill. So this is what we're going to learn. Again, we're not going to learn the whole text. It will take too long. We're going to learn parts of the text that I cut and paste, so to speak. So it's my selection, not more than that. Let's start with as brief as I can introduction, because the text was long. So I thought, okay, I'm going to cut a few parts and try to present it as short as I can. First of all, again, he was a very philosophical writer and has very philosophical ideas of Judaism. And he divides ideas into different places and ideas, and etc. So characteristics and structures. So first thing that he says in the chapter is, you know what? God is the creator, right? Okay, so whatever he does, because he is God, whatever he does, it's important. Otherwise, he would be like some kind of fool. He doesn't say it with these words, but this is my explanation. So whatever he feels he has to do, and he does, it's because it's important. So he created this world, this physical world, where his presence is hidden. So that means that he wants this world, and he wants to be with men, with us, men, I mean men and women, that human beings, with us in this world. Otherwise, again, he wouldn't have done it. This is first thing that he establishes. Second thing, when God created the whole world, the text of the Torah tells us that first man knew God and talked to God, spoke with him, and he saw God, whatever he saw, I don't know. But the point is, he was revealed. And throughout 7 bad generations, people did wrong things throughout those generations that you have in the screen, the generations. Adam, the first one, of course, ate from something he didn't have to eat. Cain killed his brother. Enosh studied idolatry. The flood, again, all kinds of problems, stealing and whatever. Division means the Tower of Babylon, and Sodom were bad people. Egypt, those 7 bad generations expelled, kicked out, so to speak, God from earth. But then 7 righteous generations, 7 good generations came into this story of the whole humankind, and they brought back God into the earth. What's the, so to speak, end of this whole thing? When the Jewish people built the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the desert, that's where the presence of God was again found in the world. We could see miracles, even though I don't know exactly how it was because I wasn't there. But the point is that there was a fire coming down from heaven, and wherever they put offerings in the altar, there was a fire again consuming the offering. So they saw miracles in this place. That's what it means. The presence of God went down into earth. So here we have 7 bad generations, 7 good generations, and of course, that's going to be connected with the 7 commandments, as we're going to learn. Now, again, the structure of the class is going to be, I'm going to read for you just the English part. I'm not going to say the Hebrew part, but I put the Hebrew part because I thought it was important to see how the Maharal wrote actually this. I'm going to read it for you, and you have some English support, so to speak, not to get confused with the Hebrew. So of course, 7 generations, bad ones, 7 good ones. Number 7, repeats itself. What does that mean? Of course, 7 mitzvot. So the Maharal writes that these 7 generations that sinned in the world, they actually did throughout those generations 7 main things. That doesn't mean that each generation did just one thing. No, each generation could have done many things, but he identifies each generation with one main and one general sin, so to speak. And the sins are, of course, the ones you have over here: eating from a part of an animal that he was alive, blasphemy, idolatry, forbidden relations, justice, or not to do injustice, theft and murder. We're not going to go into the details of each one. The Maharal also does not explain the details of each of these sins. That's like a different thing, the laws and etc. We're not going to go into that. But the point is that man was originally, and when I say men again, it's men and women, it's the same thing. Man was originally created and given a commandment to fulfill, to keep these 7 things. And again, 7 bad generations, 7 good generations, etc. We kicked out God, we brought him back. So these 7 ideas, he divides actually into 2 main things. Why? So the Maharal says, because God wants man to be good in 2 aspects of his life. Good to heavens, that means in the relationship between man and God, and good to the people around him, that means the relationship between man and the rest of the world, so to speak, of man, humankind. Therefore, he gave 3 commandments. I'm reading like the second paragraph in the Hebrew one. In the Hebrew part, he gave 3 commandments that relate, that talk, so to speak, about the relationship between God and man and God, that he should not be, man, a bad person, so to speak, towards God. And those are forbidden relations, blasphemy, and idolatry. And then God gave 3 commandments, general ideas, for the person to be good with the other people around him, which are theft, justice, the idea of not doing injustice, whatever, and murder. Those 3 things relate directly to God. He's going to explain how. And there are other 3 things relate directly to man. Now, there's a 7th commandment that the Maharal has a very interesting view on this 7th commandment, not to eat part of a living animal. The Maharal writes like this: look, this commandment is like a general idea that applies to both relationships, man towards God, man towards other human beings. And this is like the cause of all the problems. That's the way he understands it. We're going to see it. It's very interesting. And this seventh commandment, it's talking directly, related directly to the Yetzer Hara, the bad inclination that is inborn in every single human being. And therefore, to fight, so to speak, with this inner drive to do bad things, God gave us one specific command. What's the point of not eating from a part of a living animal? So the Maharal writes that you should not desire eating and cutting an animal before the animal is dead. There's not a problem of eating meat or anything. Judaism is not vegetarian. I don't have anything against it, and Judaism also does not have anything against it, but that does not enforce it. That's what I want to say. At all, you can eat meat. It's not a problem. If you don't want to eat, just don't eat. But it's okay to eat meat. And in order to force, so to speak, your bad inner inclination of doing bad things, God gave us these specific commandments. Because if a person does whatever he wants, whatever she wants, at the end, it's going to happen that the Yetzer Hara, the bad inclination within the person, is going to lead the person to do whatever this bad inclination wants. The general idea is, we're going to see this in more detail later, but the general idea is like this. Look, if you cannot control your inner drives, you're in problems. You have big problems. And sometimes, this is the way actually the Talmud says it, sometimes, most of the times, it starts small, very small, like inner drives for just eat another piece of cake. What's the problem? It's a stupid example, I know, but starts very small and then starts like growing. Once you give some room for the bad inclination to have an opinion and a valid opinion, yeah, why not? It's not a problem. Why not? Once you give it room, then it starts like gaining power within yourself, and it starts like requiring, asking more difficult things and more problematic things, until, this is the way actually our sages say it, until it says to you, why don't you go do idolatry? What's the problem? Once it's really an authority within yourself, you do whatever it wants. Where does it start? Control yourself. Learn to control yourself. And that's what it means. Don't eat part of a living animal. Like, can't you just wait until the animal dies? Like, how cruel can you be? Just wait a minute. It's going to die, Just wait. Control yourself. This is the general idea of the seventh commandment. It's related, again, in both ways. The relationship between God, a man and God, and man and the other people. Now, why 3 commandments? For each part, so to speak, man and God, and man and the other people. Why not 4? Why not 5? So the Maharal has a whole philosophical explanation that he applies not only to this particular idea, but in general, he sees man in 3 parts. So he says like this. The reason why, I'm reading in the Hebrew part, the reason why God gave us 3 commandments is because there are actually 3 parts in every single human being. You have the body, you have the soul, and something he calls man, like the combination of both. Maybe modern idea about this idea would be like synergy. It's not just the summary of all the strengths. You have strength number 1, strength number 2, strength number 3. So you go 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 3 is 6. So you have strength number 6. No. You have 1, 2, 3, and suddenly you have 10. What do you mean 10? It's not, you don't know mathematics. No, wait a second. When you have everything together working towards God, towards goodness, whatever, etc., you have much more power than just the summary of individual powers. This is what the Maharal calls man, combination of body and soul. And a person in general includes all the parts of a person. Just he gives an example. This is what we're going to call man. This is what he says, and it's like a third part. It's just like a house. This is the example he gives. It's just like a house. the parts of a house are actually wood and stone, whatever. You build a house in years 1600s, and then you don't have just a summary of stone and wood. You have a house. It's a different thing. It's a whole complete different idea. You can live inside, you can have your family, etc. It's like your house. It's not just stone and wood. This is what the Maharal explains about a philosophical view of a human being. So let's go. This, what I'm doing actually is like spoiling the whole class, but whatever. You'll understand why. This is what we're going to learn for the rest of the class. But since you have to keep the ideas in your mind, I thought it's better to show it right now, like you can see the whole big picture all at once, and then we're going to learn how the Maharal explains it. If you just get the original text, it's difficult to keep in mind which part is he talking about. Okay, so this is what we're going to learn. I'm just going to read it very fast, and then we go into the original text. We said you have 3 commandments that in the relationship between man and God, and 3 commandments in the relationship between man and other people. And there are 3 parts to man. So that's why you have soul, body, and the combination of both in the relationship between man and God, and soul, body, and the combination of both in the relationship between man and the other people. And each commandment applies to one of those parts. And the Maharal explains why. And then you have the 7th commandment, part of a living animal, that relates actually to the whole system, so to speak. It's the beginning, as the Maharal said, and he's going to repeat it. It's like the beginning of everything. If you don't have this, forget it. If you can't control yourself, I know it could sound a little bit ordinary, but if you can't control yourself in the most minimum things of your life, there could be a probability that you go kill somebody. You might ask, wait a second, I'm a regular human being. I don't kill people. I don't steal. I'm a regular guy. So what are you talking about? The rabbi is crazy. No, I'm not crazy. It starts small. Again, very small. Maybe, hopefully, we'll never reach okay, I'm going to kill somebody. No. But this idea, and the Maharal doesn't talk about this, is my addition, this idea of killing somebody is not just like taking an arm and boom, shooting somebody. No. You can embarrass somebody in public. And for our sages, actually, they say exactly this idea is like killing him or her, whatever. So you might, again, hopefully, not kill somebody, but do things that resemble that idea. This is what it means. Again, start small, control yourself. You want to say something, and again, just embarrassing somebody, maybe you just say something. Hey, you look so nice, and you kill it, literally. What do you do to your hair? You kill the person. It becomes white. What do you mean? Do you like it? Do you like it? Okay, I think you understand what I mean. This is what we're going to learn for the rest of the class. Now let's go and see this in the Maharal's view, so to speak. Let's start with idolatry. That's why I wrote in English. You can see it down there. It refers to the soul of the 3 parts of man, and refers to the relationship between man and God. This is the summary of what we are going to read right now. Now, let's go to the text of the Maharal. When talking about this idea of not sinning with your soul towards the heavens, towards God, God gave us the commandment of not committing, not doing idolatry. Avodah zara, that's what it's called in Hebrew. Why? Because all the sins, it's impossible that a person actually does it just with your soul. Like, how can you actually sin and just use your soul? When a person, God forbid, sins, you use your body also. Something has to happen in the world in order to consider that particular action a sin. Otherwise, nothing happened. You didn't do anything. If you just sit in your chair and don't do anything, you didn't sin. Maybe you're not useful for the society or whatever, but you didn't sin. So how can you actually do a sin with your soul? Asks the Maharal. The only activity that can be considered a sin just for the soul is idolatry. How do you know that? So he brings a verse from Yechezkel, chapter 14, verse number 5. The Yechezkel says when talking about the idolatry of the Jewish people, etc., he says, I'm going to grab you, so to speak, grab the Jewish people from their hearts. Like, of course, you can't just grab the heart of a person unless you kill the person, and we're not talking about that. So how do you do that? This refers to avodah zarah, to idolatry. As we say in the Talmud, he brings the place, Chulin, whatever, 142b, A, I'm sorry. So he brings again the proof from the Talmud. The Talmud says maybe the person, how can you grab a person from the heart? Maybe the person did idolatry. Maybe that's what it means. All the sins do not interchange from thought into action, except for idolatry. If a person, what I mean interchange, this is what the Talmud is talking about. It's not the Maharal. He's just quoting the Talmud. The Talmud says that when a person actually does something, an action that God said not to do, of course, that's considered a sin. Okay, that's fine. But what happens if the person does not do anything, like action? You just think about it. Suppose, again, I know it's a very extreme example, but just for the sake of example, suppose you think, I really want to kill this person, and I'm ready to do it. I would do it, but you know what? I'm not going to do it for whatever reason, because I'm a normal human being, but I would really do this. And you just think about it. Is it considered by God that you actually killed the person? The answer is no. I didn't do anything. I'm just sitting here. I want to kill him, but I didn't do anything. I'm not going to do it. So you didn't do it, even according to God. But if a person thinks about idolatry, even though you didn't do anything, you just sat in your place and you thought, man, that's really nice. I want to prostrate myself to this statue over here. I feel it's so nice. You didn't do it. That's considered doing idolatry. That's what the Talmud says. That's why, again, the Talmud brings this verse from Yechezkel and says, God is going to grab you from your heart. And this, interestingly speaking, maybe it's for a different class, but this thing applies both to Jews and non-Jews. And the Talmud says this so clearly. And the Talmud, even there's a commentary, Toises, whatever, in the Talmud over there, that is even more strict. And it says, you know what? To non-Jews, God considers thought as action everywhere, in every single case. It's very strict and something that needs to be learned in itself. But this is the way the Maharal understands, and he's of course talking about non-Jews. It's not talking about Jews because we're talking about the 7 commandments that God gave for non-Jews. But it says clearly, how can it be that a person sins just with the soul in relation to God? That's idolatry. Okay, point number 1. Let's go to number 2. Forbidden relations, which again, there are many details to this. I'm not going into the details right now. This idea of forbidden relations is a sin, as I wrote it in English down there, relates to the body of a person within the relationship between man and God. Why? The Maharal explains. Because this is a sin on the flesh of the person, like with the body, directly with the body. Because a person has a bad inclination in the body and desires these forbidden relations. A person might ask, yeah, but you know what? I don't desire so much. But again, this can be, God forbid, in a physical way, like the wife of somebody else, and you have intimacy, etc., or even in thought. When a person is walking in the street, maybe for men it's easier to understand than for women, but in any case, a person is walking in the street and is watching somebody and saying, what a nice girl, and you're thinking all kinds of things, even though you didn't do anything. You know what? I'm just walking in the street. Yeah, but to God, it's a problem, you know? Spiritually speaking, it is a problem. It is a problem. Even though it's not considered like an action, just like we learned before about idolatry. No, it's not the same category, but definitely it's not nice. Okay, so because, again, going back to the text of the Maharal, because a person desires these things, it's a sin that is directly related to the desire of the body. And this is clearly explained in many places, says the Maharal, that the sin of forbidden relations has a direct relationship with the body. just as the Torah says about the soita. Soita is a very specific thing. This is found in the second section, Nosoi, of the fourth book of the Torah. It's a whole big thing. I'm not going to explain the whole thing. There's a whole tractate of Talmud just talking about this law, that when a person thinks that his wife is doing things with somebody else, and he forbids the wife from talking to this guy, from going with this guy, being with this guy in front of witnesses. It's a whole thing that I'm not going to explain, but the point is that it's clear that the Torah, now going back to the text, the Torah gives a whole different type of offering when this woman was actually suspected of doing things she was not supposed to do, has to go to the temple and bring an offering, etc., etc. This offering is like of barley. It's not of wheat, which is the regular offering that people brought to the temple. It's of barley. And the Talmud says, why barley? Because barley it's a food for animals. And this woman, we suspect, we don't really know, but we suspect she did animal things, because animals don't really care about my wife or your wife. It's just animals, bodies, etc. So that's why this sin of forbidden relations has a relationship with the body, just as if you were an animal. This is how the Maharal explains why this part is related to the body. I did not write it down because it's a whole long thing, but the question would be, why is this connected to God? Like, I'm with the wife of somebody else. Maybe I'm doing a wrong thing to somebody else, to the wife or to the husband, whatever. What does it have to do with God? No relationship. The Maharal explains that when a person has intimacy with somebody he's not supposed to, or even when you have with somebody who is supposed to, you're actually making God do something with this relationship. That means to create a new human being out of this relationship. In the case of a permitted, allowed relationship, it's fine. Sometimes it's created, sometimes, in other words, sometimes she gets pregnant, sometimes she doesn't get pregnant. Okay, that depends on God or whatever the case is. But if she is getting pregnant and this relationship is not allowed, so you're actually bothering God. You're not bothering somebody else, only God, because he has to do something with this. That's why this particular sin, of course, relates to the body because of desire, etc., etc., as we explained, but is within the realm of the relationship between man and God. Let's move on. Third, blasphemy. Blasphemy in Hebrew is called Gevurot Hashem, which means literally, euphemism, blessing God. Actually, we're not blessing God when you actually cursing him, but that's the way our sages actually call it, because they don't want to write cursing God. So they call it blessing God. This thing, it's something that relates to man as a whole thing, soul and body together, synergy as we explained before, and within the realm of the relationship between man and God. Let's go to the text of the Maharal. A person, a man, it's composed of body and soul, as we explained. And this sin of blasphemy, it's a sin with the tongue, that a person actually curses God, God's name, or whatever the case is, without going into the details. And the definition of man, what's a man? What's a human being actually? It's medaber, he talks. All other creations can have other specific virtues that they have. But we have a specific virtue of man talking. Actually, he doesn't bring it over here, but if you see, you have to know a little bit of Hebrew and Aramaic, but if you see in the translation of Onkelos was a convert in the times of the Roman Empire, etc., he wrote a whole translation of the Torah, of the text, into Aramaic. That's one of the first, not the first, but one of the first. And when he translates, when God creates man, and he says, Vayehi ha'adam leruach chaya, the man was a living soul, Onkelos translates leruach memalela, a talking soul. Like the main thing of man, human being, that's what I mean, is talking. Tongue, talking. Now, talking relates, says the Maharal, to the whole form, to the whole structure of a human being. And that includes body and soul. That's why when a person curses God with his tongue, this sin actually relates to the whole person as a whole. Again, the combination of both things, as the sin of idolatry relates only to the soul, and the sin of forbidden relations relates only to the body, this sin of blasphemy relates to the whole thing of man, human being. And you should also know, the second paragraph is very interesting. You should also know, and this is the main thing, that why is this sin of blasphemy relates to the man as a whole thing? Because the person that actually sins with this sin, he's negating the main thing. He's cursing God and therefore negating, so to speak, God, disregarding God at all. And since this person automatically has no relationship with God because he doesn't want God in his life, that's why he's cursing, automatically he stops existing. The only thing, the Maharal doesn't go into this because it's a very, too much mysticism for Maharal himself. He was a mystic, but it's too much. That's more modern, so to speak, Hasidic thought and whatever. I'm not going to go into this. We're learning the Maharal right now. But the point is that God creates everything all the time, constantly, quote unquote, speaking. As it says that God creates the whole creation with his speech. Therefore, now again, going back to the text of the Maharal, when a person negates God, he gets disconnected from the main thing, that which supports and creates everything all the time. Automatically, you stop existing. Your own existence is non-existence. That's why it relates, this sin of blasphemy relates to a person as a whole, because you stop existing. Your whole existence doesn't make any sense. That's what the Maharal says. If you see the last three words of the Hebrew paragraph, the second paragraph, your existence stops existing. You're nothing. Because you negate God, you disconnect from the source of life. Okay, let's go. Let's move on. Now it gets a little bit more complicated. That's why you see more text. The Maharal, again, he had an idea in his mind, and he is dividing the different commandments into different categories, and now he has to explain why. So it's not so easy. Sometimes the explanation is easier, and sometimes it's not so easy. So let's go. Justice relates, now going into the relationship between man and the other people around him. We finished, so to speak, with relationship between man and God. Going to the second part, relationship man and his other people. The first commandment is justice, to make justice. And the Maharal explains like this. This idea of not being bad with other creatures, with other people, has three specific sins. He's going to explain each one of them. Justice, theft, and murder. Justice, this specific sin is with the soul. Why? Because a person is turning around justice, something that was emes, truth, and righteous, straight. You're actually doing it in a different way. This righteousness and this justice, this is what the Maharal says, is ingrained in the soul of human being. Because truth and righteousness, that is the soul of a human being. This is what the Maharal says. Therefore, this sin of not doing justice is directly related to the soul of man. Again, relationship man to man. That's why you see in the English part it says justice, and in parentheses, soul to man. That means relationship between man and other people. Why do you say that truth and justice, of righteousness, etc., is directly the soul of a human being? So he says because righteousness and justice is in the brain, in the mind of a person. A normal, even simple mind wants justice in the world. Nobody wants to be if you are a normal person, like just do some wrong things, whatever. I don't want to say wrong words. Furthermore, says the Maharal, when a person does not do justice, that shows that you have a blemish in your soul. In other words, like chisus hanefesh, he says, in very strong words, blemish in your soul. Because every single person has to see, when a person sees, injustice, then the soul wakes up and you want to do justice. Nobody likes, so to speak, hungry boys in Somalia, injustice in any part of the world. Nobody likes it. Nobody feels good with it. When you see something that is not correct, it's not righteous, you feel bad. A normal person feels bad. Therefore, every single judge has to have a strong heart to do proper justice. It's just like as if he was saying, like, listen to your heart, to a normal heart, and you will do justice. And that relates to your soul, because the innermost part of a human being is righteousness. And this is clear, says the Maharal, that din, this idea of justice, comes from the awakening of the soul. When you really go deep within yourself and you awaken your normal human soul, you will gonna do justice. This is how the Maharal explains it. Now, he starts doing the comparison between men, the relationship between men, and the relationship between man and God. That's why I put a second paragraph and a second line in the English part. This commandment of justice is just the same thing as the commandment of avodah zarah, idolatry. That is a commandment between man and God. Why? Because idolatry is called Elokim acherim. In the Ten Commandments, other gods. That's what idolatry means. Don't have other gods. And a dayan, a judge, is also called Elokim. Again, listen to the words. Elokim acherim, that's actually the text of the Ten Commandments. Elokim acherim means other gods. But the word Elokim specifically is used to talk about other gods, other powers, so to speak. And the same exact word is used to talk about judges. Other judges, or whatever judges, are also called Elokim. So he related, again, these two things. Don't have other gods, idolatry, with judges, justice. And our sages say in the Talmud that a person or a society that puts judges into power that are not proper judges, it is as if they were actually planting an idolatry tree, which was called Asherah. It doesn't matter, it's just a word in Hebrew. So again, you see this connection between justice and idolatry. It's the same basic thing. Therefore, these two commandments are actually the same parallel, so to speak, same idea. They relate to the soul part of man, both in the relationship between men and other men, that is justice, or the relationship between man and God, that's idolatry. Okay, let's move on. Theft, the second commandment, so to speak, in the relationship between man and other men, that relates specifically to the body. And that's parallel, so to speak, to forbidden relations that also relate to the body, but in the relationship between man and God. How does he explain it? Let's go to the Hebrew part. Gezel, this idea of theft, of stealing, etc., it's exactly the same thing, says the Maharal. They're parallel with forbidden relationships. Because in every single place, our sages actually say that there are two general ideas that a person actually likes, enjoys, physically speaking. That's stealing and forbidden relationships. Our sages use this expression. So that's one way he connects these two ideas, because you see, in the language of our sages, the whole time they're saying, yeah, stealing and forbidden relationships, that's what people like. That's what people actually want to do. You see that these two things are actually the same. Now, the main thing, the Maharal continues, the main idea, the nutshell, so to speak, of stealing is to pursue the money of other people. You like the money of other people, the possessions, whatever, of other people. That's why you steal. You like what the other one has. And the desire to have richness and to have properties, etc., etc. And this is, of course, related to body things, just like forbidden relationships. Only that stealing is a problem between men and other people, and forbidden relationships, as I explained before, is a problem between men and God. Now, this idea of forbidden relationships and stealing, theft, whatever, they are not exactly desire, because forbidden relationships is that a person pursues, likes, wants, etc., women, desires other women, or when a person wants to steal, it's because he pursues the money and the richness of other people. But this is not just a desire, that I like this or I like that. No, it's not just that. Rather, you want a specific thing. I want the wife of my husband, of my neighbor, or I want the money of my neighbor. It's a specific, very clear thing. It's not that I just desire. No, like for instance, just to give an example, the Maharal doesn't talk about it, but to want food, it has nothing to do with the food of my neighbor or the food of no, I just want food. I like food. What's the problem? So that's more related to desire in general. But here, the Maharal is trying to make a very clear difference between not eating part of a living animal, which relates to desire itself, by itself, desire, the idea of desire, or forbidden relationships. Yeah, you have forbidden relationships because you desire the wife of somebody else. Yeah, right. But it's a very specific thing, very individual thing. Women, I like this woman. That's why I go. I don't care if it's the wife of somebody else, etc. So that's why he wants to make a difference here, over here. Again, just to finish the text, the ideas. The problem with forbidden relationships is that a person wants just to be promiscuous. He just wants, etc. Or stealing, he just wants money, more and more money, even if he doesn't need. But desire, just by itself, the idea of desire is that a person wants anything that is lacking. And not that really he wants something specific. No, he just wants, because he wants anything. Even if he's not lacking that particular thing, he just wants, he just desires. And that's something else, says the Maharal. As we're going to explain, that's not eating part of a living animal. Murder is directly related to blasphemy. As you see in the English, murder is something that relates to the man, to the person as a whole, in his relationship between man and other people, just as blasphemy, not cursing God, relates to man as a whole, as we explained, because of dibur, the words, and the talking and the tongue, etc., as we explained, that's between man and God. Let's see the text. This sin of murder, of course, relates to the person in his relationship with other people. And this sin, it's for man, just as he is a human being, for man. And this sin is not just for a part of a person, rather for the whole person. Of course, you can't just kill a part of a person. Either you kill the whole person or you don't do anything. That's why the Maharal is saying, like, look, it's a very rational thing. Either you kill the whole thing or nothing, so it relates to the man as a whole. Just as the sin of blasphemy, and we said that the person is negating the main thing, that means God, which is everything, the same thing happens. When a person kills somebody else, you're killing the whole person. And therefore, it relates to the man as a whole, and not just like justice or stealing, theft, which the sin, it's a person that's doing something that is not right, but the problem, the blemish, it's in a part of a person, either spiritually speaking, like the soul, says the Maharal, or bodily speaking, like the physical part of a person, No, that's only a part. But the idea of murder, just like the idea of blasphemy, is that a person, again, he goes to the same idea. He's negating the main thing completely, which is God, and therefore he's nothing. And the same thing happens when a person kills somebody else. You make this somebody else into nothing. He's not a human being anymore. Dead. And the last part, even though it's an important one, he speaks like very briefly about it. The seventh commandment, it's related to desire. In Hebrew, it's called chemda. Actually, the text of the ten commandments that God gave to Jewish people, it says, do not desire. It's the same word, sachmoit, chemda, etc. And the problem over here, you see in the middle of the first Hebrew line, a person cannot wait until the animal is dead. You can't wait. Why? And this comes because a person has a strong feeling of desire. And desire comes from the choimer, the material part of a person, because materialistically speaking, you're always missing something. Like there's nobody perfect in this world, only God. He's the only one that has everything, etc., etc. I think it's a simple idea, a simple concept. Each one of us, we're always missing something. Always, whatever the case is. Therefore, a person always desires to fulfill, to have whatever he or she feels or thinks or considers, whatever the case is missing. And you're always going to be missing something. Of course, the Maharal doesn't say this. I just translated basically what he said. I added some words to make it easier to understand. But the point is that you might ask, okay, so we're doomed. Like we have a physical body. The physical body always decides something. If you have money, you want more. And if you have whatever, health, you want more, or you want to live more, etc., etc. So we're doomed. The answer to this question is actually very simple. And it is like this. A person has to consider, look at yourself, meditate, contemplate your life. What do you really need? Like, what's your really, when Yaakov in Parshas Vayishlach, Yaakov meets Esav. And when they meet, they have two different expressions. This is a famous thing. I think I explained this in other classes also. But when they meet, they have two different expressions that actually shows this particular point. Esav says, Achi yesh li rav, my brother, I have a lot. That means he had more than what I actually needed. He had a lot. And he also desired more, of course, because that's the natural thing of a human being, as we just explained from the Maharal. And Yaakov says, Achi yesh li koil, my brother had everything. Yaakov also was very rich, very rich. The Torah says this. However, he had everything that he needed, not 1 cent more, not 1 cent less. Of course, there's a lot of people in the world with lots of needs, and of course, God should bless everybody to have all the needs that they have, etc., etc. But the point that I'm trying to make is, a person has to be conscious: what do I need to live? Not what do I want. Of course, I would like a Ferrari. Yeah, very nice. Do I need it? No, not really. Actually, where I live, it's impossible to drive. Buenos Aires is all full of, going up and down. You can't drive this car. It's very nice. You can't drive it. It's impossible. So do I really need this? No, not really. That's the seventh commandment, which is a very general thing, attacking, so to speak, desire. But the main ideas we already explained. I'm going to go back on purpose. We're going to, just as explained, let's see again the big picture quickly. We have two parts: relationship between man and God, relationship between man and other people. And since man has three parts, soul, body, and the whole thing, we have 3 commandments on one side, 3 commandments on the other side. I'm not going to read because you know also how to read English, and a 7th general thing, which talks about desire. Are you going to stop having desires? The answer is no. You will never stop because you're a human being. Only when you pass away, God forbid, you don't desire anything else. You don't need anything else. But the point is, control your desires and be able to contemplate which of these desires are actually important in my life. Because I need, like, for instance, I'm hungry. Yeah, okay, it's a desire. I would like food. But if you really need food, what's the problem? I'm hungry. My body needs food. God created me with the necessity of eating. Okay, so I eat. What's the problem? Do you desire the food? Okay, I want food. Whatever the food is, I don't care, but I need food. That's okay. And that's not going to stop. That's a normal thing, how God created the person. But you have to, again, contemplate which of these desires are actually important and which ones are actually not.